Ananda Govinda Madhava Satchidananda Narayana Hare Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Shri Krishna Pranamastu. Om Shri Guru Bhyo Namaha. जन्माष्टमी की शुभकामनाएं सबको. We will start where we left, but we have today and half a day tomorrow. So I might speed up a little bit here and there, skip a bit and move forward. Huh? So news reached Dwarka. So Satyajit and all is over, ill-fated gem. News reached Dwarka that Akrura was performing yajna after yajna, greater than other, one yajna greater than the other, in the city of Kashi. He was spending money like water. That daily he fed thousands and thousands of poor people. That's why he was spending. And so on and so on. At the same time, ill omens were seen in Dwarka. Troubles visited several people. The citizens began to talk. They said, years ago, there was a king of Kashi who had been worried because there was no rain in the country, and the people were suffering as a result of this famine. Then there came to him a rishi by name Swapalka. The king gave his daughter Gandhini to him in marriage. And the poor rishi was just going along, caught him and gave his daughter in marriage. After that, rains came and the country became very happy once again. This Akrura is the son of that rishi, Swapalka and Gandhini. The god of rain, Indra, is very fond of him. And so there is always rain where Akrura is. Also, there are no sufferings or diseases where Akrura is. All this is true. But the ill omens seen in Dwarka and the yajnas performed by Akrura in Kashi, and also many auspicious happenings here and there, make us suspect that the jewel Syamantaka is with him. Akrura is now called Dhanapati, which means Lord of Wealth, the king amongst givers, and it seems as though Krishna has given him the jewel and asked him to stay away from here. So rumors. Nothing else can explain these happenings. As it is usual with rumor, the tongues, which are 1,000 in number, began to spread this story about Krishna, and to his dismay, even Balarama and Satyabhama seemed to have lost faith in him. Whenever he said, no, I don't know this, he knows. If Balarama and Satyabhama can lose faith in me, then what? Who else is there? He could easily believe they're telling themselves, perhaps the story is true, it seems probable, Akrura has been a great friend of Krishna, who knows? Again, Krishna had to vindicate himself in the eyes of the people of Dwarka. What was more, he had to regain the confidence of Balarama and Satyabhama. Krishna sent messengers to Kashi and had Akrura brought to Dwaraka. He came, but very unwillingly and with great fear in his heart. Krishna made the people and his father and brother to be present in the council hall. He wanted to clear the case. Akrura was asked to come. Soon as he came, Krishna walked to him with a smiling face, took his hands in his, placed him on the honored seat, treated him as a special guest. So everyone was watching this and eager to know what it was about, what was going to happen. Krishna asked Akrura about his welfare and his new life in Kashi. He then said, I am told that you are acquiring a lot of punya by innumerable charitable deeds and by the many yajnas that you have performed. I am very proud to know that you are now called Dhanapati, the king among givers. It is as it should be. Right, you're right. It should be like that. Good to be a Dhanapati, good to give, good to have yajnas. All nice. But please clear one doubt in the minds of all the people of Dwaraka and those of my own people. Please admit to everyone that Shatadhanva gave you the gem, Syamantaka. Otherwise they think I gave it to you. I have known this for a long time, did not want to take it from you since you are doing so much good. But you have made me appear like an accomplice in this theft. That is what the citizens of Dwaraka think, that I gave the jewel to you. Please convince them they have nothing to do with it. Actually, since Shatrajit died without a son to perform his funeral rites, this jewel should be handed down to his daughter and her sons, who will offer the rice and the till to the dead man every year. But we do not want it. You observe all the rules of purity so well, and you are a very good man. The jewel can stay with you. We really do not want it. Only please be good enough to make my brother and my wife believe that I had nothing to do with it, with your running away with it, that you did it on your own and not at my request. And Krishna has to clarify some things. What about mortals like us? We have to clarify. Otherwise questions are asked, people get angry, send angry WhatsApps. First of all, they do not understand how this mind works, just as they don't understand how that mind works. Shame to the verge of tears, Akrura removed the upper cloth that he was wearing. And out of a knot in it, he brought out the Syamantaka and placed it in Krishna's hand. Krishna held it in his hand for a while. His face was grim and sad. After a moment, the smile came back. Old smile. He showed it to everyone assembled there and gave it back to Akrura. Here, watch, I'm giving it back. Krishna walked quietly out of the hall and no one spoke a word. Now, 1 year had passed. Messengers came from Panchala to announce the swayamvara of Draupadi, the daughter of Drupada. Krishna, as she was named, she was also named Krishna, had been born of the sacrificial fire along with her brother Drishtadyumna. And there was a great story behind it. Drupada had performed a sacrifice with a desire to get a son who could kill Drona. his enemy and the daughter fit enough to be the bride of Arjuna, because he admired Arjuna so much. But fates had so conspired that the desire of Draupadi was not to be achieved. The Pandavas had perished in the fire at Varnavata. That's what they thought. And the king had to hold a swayamvara for Draupadi. The feat which the hero was to perform was a test of an archer's skill. If not Arjuna, at least an archer close to Arjuna, as powerful as Arjuna in archery, was the desire of Drupada. Not Draupadi, Drupada, the father. Krishna knew already that the Pandavas had escaped from the house of lack, as though he knew nothing. He accepted the invitation for the swayamvara. I don't know anything. The entire Yadava clan went to Panchala. But Krishna, at the 11th hour, had told his son Pradyumna and his cousin Satyaki that they should desist from attempting the Matsya Yantra, which was the test. He wanted Arjuna to win the bride who was born for him. The 5 brothers would somehow manage to be there. He knew that. Things happened as predicted. Arjuna, in the role of a Brahmin, pierced the Matsya Yantra and won the hand of Draupadi. Later, Drupada came to know that the Pandavas were alive and that it was Arjuna who had won Draupadi in the contest. Krishna and Balarama went to the potter's house where the Pandavas were staying with their mother Kunti, not wanting to be recognized before anything happened. They were staying in a poor potter's house. Krishna went there to the potter's house. He was happy with potter's houses, dhobis, trivakras, and so on. It was the first time the cousins met. They fell at the feet of Yudhishthira and Bhima. Krishna embraced Arjuna, Nakula and Sahadeva prostrated at the feet. At that moment was formed a relationship, a friendship between Krishna and Arjuna, and the decision on the part of Krishna to be with the 5 brothers through the troubles that were in store for them. Where did it happen? In the potter's house. Not in a palace. A few months after this, Krishna went to Indraprastha with his cousin Satyaki to spend a few months with Yudhishthira and his brothers. Thrilled at the thought that they would all be together for some time, the Pandavas welcomed Krishna and Satyaki with great affection. Krishna went and greeted Kunti. How did he greet Kunti? By prostrating before her and taking the dust of her feet. Now the Bhagavat throughout maintains that Krishna is a Purna Avatara, complete Avatara. Purna Avatara goes to an elderly lady, the matriarch of the Pandava family, and prostrates at her feet and takes the dust of her feet. He said, "How are you? Is everything well with you? Now that your sons have come out of their hiding, like the moon after an eclipse, Your troubles must be over. Kunti looked at his smiling face. Her voice was hoarse with pain. Remembered pain, adds Vyasa or Sukadeva, remembered pain is as terrible as the pain itself. And her thoughts went back to the days of their hiding, their escape through the tunnel during the middle of the night, the long walk from Varnavata to the banks of the Ganga, and again from the banks of the river to the forest, their troubled sleep, Hidimba's death, it all came back to her mind vividly, and she related them all to Krishna. And then she spoke of the final humiliation when they lived at Ekachakra on the alms brought by her sons. The Kshatriyas were begging for food in no other way. They brought it to Kunti, of course. Krishna, she said, now you're with us. That is enough. I can go through any amount of pain and suffering as long as I know that you are with us in thought and you will protect us. I knew it on the day you sent Akrura to Hastina long ago, after you had killed Kamsa. It is this love that you have for us that has kept us hopeful all these years. I know that you are the Paramatma. Yeah, I have no doubt about that. And that to you, there is no illusion of I and mine. Still, you have been giving us your affection always, and we will not perish. Yudhishthira said, my Lord, you are beyond the reach of thoughts of the greatest of rishis who have performed yagas and tapas for years and years. Yet it is our special privilege that you are with us. That you have taken a human form and name for the sake of beings like us. I do not know what good deeds we have done to deserve this. Krishna stayed with them through the rainy season, 4 months of rain. The 4 months were the happiest months in the lives of the Pandavas. They were very happy. What do they want? Krishna is with them for 4 months, Chaturmasi, anyway he won't go out. They even forgot that he can stop the rain if he wants, but the Rajasuya followed afterwards, and that was the end of their peace of mind. Then began their years of exile and its attendant sufferings. Now they were happy. Sometimes when the Lord comes and spends 4 months with you in your house, the rest of the year is terrible. It's like a test to see if you can sustain it. Whether you can stay with, usually blaming the miseries, blaming the problems, people throw the Lord out, forgetting that He has brought it on for them to get purified and become better. One day, during Krishna's stay with the Pandavas, 4 months, Krishna and Arjuna decided to go and hunt in the dense forest which was said to be inhabited by many wild beasts. Tigers, wild boars and gentle deer were there in plenty. It was late and they were tired. Arjuna was very thirsty and they went to the banks of the river Yamuna. After quenching their thirst with the waters of the river, they sat down on the grass and rested their tired limbs. While they were seated there, they found a young girl walking towards them. She was dark and very beautiful. Krishna was dark and very beautiful. She halted when she was some distance from them. They could see that she wanted to come nearer but was too nervous to do so. Krishna asked his friend to go and find out what she wanted. So Arjuna approached her and said, "A beautiful and young woman like you should not be wandering alone like this in this wild spot. Who are you? Whose daughter are you? Where do you come from? Is there any help that we can render you? Are you in trouble? Tell us." She looked at him and said, "I am the daughter of Surya and my name is Kalindi. I have been performing tapasya with the desire of becoming the wife of Narayana." Big desire. "I have sworn that I will marry him or I will die. I have built for myself a small kutir on the banks of the Yamuna and am spending my time waiting for the coming of the Lord. Now, my prayers have been answered. I have seen him." She cast her eyes down when she saw Krishna smiling at her. Arjuna is the one who is doing the dialogue. Arjuna went to Krishna and related to him what she told him. Krishna went to Kalindi, who prostrated at his feet. He lifted her up. He placed her in the chariot and went to Yudhishthira. Very simple. No problem. Kalindi spent a happy time with Draupadi and the other women in the Antapura of the Pandavas. It was during the stay on the banks of the Yamuna that one day Agni, the god of fire, came to Krishna and Arjuna and asked them to help him burn the forest by name Kandava. They helped him consume it. Indra tried to put out the fire. So, when Agni asked them to help him consume the forest, Arjuna told him, "If I have a powerful bow and a quiver with an infinite number of arrows and a good chariot with swift horses, then I can help you. Or else, it will not be easy." Agni then asked Varuna for help. Varuna, the god of the waters, came and presented Arjuna with the famed bow by name Gandhiva. That's how he acquired that Gandhiva. An inexhaustible quiver and a chariot which was drawn by 4 white horses, which earned for him the name Shvetavahana, white horse vehicles. Arjuna rode around the entire forest with Krishna, to whom Varuna had given the chakra. They prevented the creatures from escaping. A few did, however, escape from the fire, and one of them was Maya, who fell at the feet of Arjuna and begged him for life. The rule set down for a Kshatriya is he should not kill anyone who has surrendered and begs to be alive. So Maya was allowed to go unscathed. They'll pay for it. In his gratitude, Maya insisted on building a sabha for Yudhishthira in the city, in Indraprastha. When he returned to Dwaraka, Krishna married Kalindi according to Vedic rites for the public. Vasudeva had a sister by name Rajadi Devi, and she was given in marriage to the king of Avanti. She had 3 children. The 2 sons were called Vinda and Anuvinda, while the daughter was named Mitravinda. A swayamvara was held when she was of marriageable age. Who do you think went to the swayamvara? Krishna went for the swayamvara. Actually, it's a nice way of marriage. The girl said, you choose. Put your garland on who you like. Come on. Now if the Lord goes, what to do? Mitravinda had chosen Krishna as her Lord. But the Avanti brothers, who were friends of Duryodhana, would not let her have her wish. Krishna knew that she had chosen him, and so, while the other aspirants for her hand were looking on, and while the brothers stood helplessly by, Krishna took her and carried her away to Dwaraka and married her. Now, I want to move because tomorrow we need to do some more. Do we do Narakasura or move on? Shishupala of Chedi Salva attacks Dwaraka. Krishna on the battlefield. A long battle came to an end, and the Yadavas entered the city in triumph. Big battle went. You can read afterwards. I will go to things which are very important and then carry on. The whole Bhagavad is important, of course, but there is some editorial license. So, there was a Brahmin who was a great devotee of Krishna. In his young days, he had been the companion of Krishna in the Gurukula in Sandipani. Years had passed, and they had not dealt kindly with him. The years had passed, the years had not dealt kindly with him. He was a man of simple taste and he had no desires. His senses were under control. You could define him as a proper Brahmin, Brahma vid Brahma iva bhavati. His senses were under control and he had no attachment to worldly things. He was very poor, but he was satisfied with anything he got, and he never blamed fate or the gods for his poverty. He was fortunate in his wife. What happens if the wife wants to go to Dubai Mall every day? Not much. Terrible. So what to do? He found a wife who was just like him. He was fortunate in his wife, who was similar to him in her qualities. She was lean and devoted as she was to her husband. She would eat whatever food was available. No complaints. Constant fasting had made her lean, but the face was very tranquil, just like her husband's. They were called Sudama and Kalyani. Once, however, she could not bear to see the sufferings of her husband because of poverty. After great deliberation, she made up her mind to talk to him. She went and stood before him, and with great hesitation, she began to talk. Words were halting, and her voice was so soft that even he could not hear properly. She said, "My Lord, you have often told me that Krishna, the Lord of Dwaraka, was once your friend and playmate. He is a great prince now. He is reputed to be very considerate towards Brahmins, especially ones like you, about those who have surrendered themselves to him. His spouse is the goddess Lakshmi herself, the goddess of wealth. There is no doubt about his immense wealth." Sudama looked at her and felt very sorry for her. He was wearing the simplest of garments, and it was torn in several places as his own was. She had not had a full meal ever since she had married him. Nor did he actually. And yet never once had she complained. Don't look around, you will not find such women. Now it was evident that she was trying to ask for something. He waited for her to continue. After some hesitation, she said, "My Lord, why should you not go and see this Krishna? He's sure to give you something if he sees you. He's now in Dwaraka, surrounded by all his kinsmen. I think he will be happy to see you and probably relieve you of your poverty which is killing you." After saying this, she stood silent, afraid lest she had spoken too much. She did not dare to lift up her eyes. Sudama felt sorry for her. This was the first time in her life that she had asked for something, and even that because she wanted to see him happy and comfortable. He told himself, "I will please her." Otherwise he didn't want to go. What has it to do with all this? I'll please her, so let me go. Incidentally, I will be very happy since I will be seeing my friend after many years. We can sit and talk about the old days of our boyhood. We're sure to enjoy our meeting after these many years. he spoke to his wife and said that he would go. And added, Kalyani, have you anything in the house which I can take as a gift? I cannot go empty-handed and see my friend after so many years. Oh, they don't have anything. Quietly she went out of the presence of her husband, went to the neighbor's house. She asked the housewife if she had anything to give her. She did not have anything. Kalyani walked out of the house with disappointment. The man of the house came in just then, and he asked his wife about the lady who walked out with so much pain written on her face. His wife told him what she had wanted and how she could not comply with her wishes. He said, Lady, please wait. And he took a handful of rice which he had brought home, tied in his upper cloth. That's the usual habit of tying. She accepted it with gratitude and joy. She realized that it would not be enough. So she went to 3 more houses and collected just fistful of rice in every house. She thus collected 4 handfuls and no more. She thought that this was all she was fated to get, 4 fistfuls of rice. With great care, she had beaten the rice. She made poha and tied it up in an old piece of cloth, gave it to her. Taking a small bundle in his hand, Sudama left his house with great joy in his mind, since he was going to see his friend, and at the same time he was worried about how he was going to get an audience with Krishna. It was not the old playmate Krishna that he was going to see. It was now Krishna, a member of the royal household, and not just his companion of long ago. Perhaps the doorkeepers wouldn't let me in. How would I announce myself? They would laugh if he told them that he was a friend of Krishna, a very dear friend. But that was what he had been. He smiled to himself, thinking of the days when they had spent together, playing marbles. Even as he was thinking of the Lord and his meeting with him, Sudama found that he was in Dwaraka. He already reached. Evidently Krishna, knowing that he was coming to see him, did something. So in a short time he was in Dwaraka. Some witchcraft. Sudama looked around and stood admiring the beauty of the city. He reached the section where the army was placed. Crossing that, he passed 3 wide and large roads and found several glorious mansions there. He entered one which seemed more beautiful than the others. Nobody stopped him. He thought this must be the one. He passed the doorway and reached the inner hall. He was right. There were no security guards for Krishna in Dwaraka. Nothing. Otherwise he could not have entered. He passed the doorways and reached the inner hall. There he stood rooted to the spot. He could not move. His eyes were drinking in the scene. He saw Krishna seated on a beautiful seat with his dear Rukmini by his side. Even as he entered, Krishna jumped out of his seat and ran towards Sudama. He embraced him warmly. There were tears in the eyes of Krishna, and they spilled out like drops of water from a lotus. Sudama was weeping openly with joy. Krishna took both his hands, his own, and led him to the seat which he had been using. He washed the worn feet of Sudama and he sprinkled the water on his own head and that of Rukmini. He gave the fan made of the feathers of the peacock to Rukmini, who stood by the side of the poor Brahmin. She fanned him while Krishna cooled his limbs with sandal paste and perfume water. The people in the apartments were watching Krishna and the poor emaciated frame of the Brahmin, who was all skin and bone, whose clothes were old and dirty and torn in several places. His face was sad and his skin was dry and he looked like a beggar. And the Lord of Lords washed his feet, took the water on his head as if it was some holy tirtha. How fortunate was this man that he should be honored so by Krishna. Thoughts like these passed the minds of those who were standing by. Krishna sat by his side and holding his hand in his, he spoke to Sudama about the many happy days they had spent together in the Gurukula of Sandipani. Happy days they had been. Do you remember? Was the beginning of each of the sentence spoken by each of them? You remember how you took the master's cane and ran away? Yeah, I remember you brought it back. So they sat for a long time. Krishna then said, Sudama, my friend, how have you been all these years? After going back to your home from the Gurukula, did you get married? He forgot to ask. Is your wife as gentle and good as you are? You have never been very fond of the things of this world. So you seem to have abandoned the ordinary pleasures of the world which other men pursue so eagerly. Tell me, I want to know all that has been happening to you. Krishna looked at the distress writ on the face of his friend, pretended not to have noticed it. Without giving a chance to his friend to talk, he said, do you think often of the days we spent in the home of a guru? A father who gives birth is the first guru. A mother is the second. And the preceptor who gives us wisdom, he is the other guru who has to be honored more. The one who has taught us the path of Brahma Vidya to realize the Brahman, that is our true third guru. Others are upagurus. My friend, do you remember one of the incidents which happened when we were at the Gurukula? Our mother, our guru's wife, had asked us to go to the forest to collect samit, twigs used to feed the fire. We were wandering in the forest and suddenly there was heavy rain. A stormy wind was blowing and thunder and lightning frightened us. The sun had set and there was darkness all around. We were not able to make out the pitfalls and the path that we were wandering in because of the rain and darkness. Clinging to each other, we wandered around the forest. We had lost our way. So passed the night. Sudama picked up the story and said, yes, early in the morning, as soon as the sun had risen, our Guru had been worried about us coming to the forest. He came in search of us and found us with great difficulty. Krishna said, he was overcome with compassion for us. You remember? And he said, oh, my sons, what a lot of suffering you have undergone for my sake. The best way to pay respect to one's Guru is to serve him without thinking of one's own bodily comforts. No demands. And you have all done that. The only way in which I can bless you is by saying that all your desires will be granted. All the lessons that you have learned from me will reward you in this life and the life hereafter. Sudama, I can never forget that night we spent together. Incidents like this were remembered by both of them, and time passed pleasantly for both of them. Krishna, who knew the mind of everyone, who loved pure-minded Brahmins more than his kinsmen even, who was the ultimate solace of all who need comfort, who was the Lord of the Lords, knew what had brought Sudama to Dwarka. But he wanted to see first to tease his friend. So he said, my dear friend, what have you brought it for me from your home? Sudama was silent. He was feeling ashamed of the tiny bundle of cloth which held the fried rice. Krishna would not let him change the subject. Perhaps you have brought me something very simple. Perhaps you think it is not rich enough for the surroundings. But Sudama, do you not know that to me, what is given with love and bhakti is the most dear, even if it's a small gift, smaller than an atom. A gift which is not accompanied by bhakti will never please me. Give me anything you want, but there is no due. I don't care. But let it be a flower, a leaf, a fruit, even a drop of water. If it is offered to me with bhakti, by one whose mind is pure and is without sin, that is what is dear to me, and I will accept it with love. Give me what you brought. Even then, Sudama was feeling shy. Krishna thought to himself, my poor friend has been poor all these years, and yet he has never once thought of asking me to help him. Because of his wife's insistence, he has come to me. He knows everything. I must grant him what he has not asked me for. Krishna waited for his friend to give him something as though he were a child waiting for a gift from his mother. He then caught hold of Sudama's upper cloth and said, look, my sister has sent me something which you do not want to give me. and you open the tiny bundle which contained the beaten rice full of chaff and little specks of dirt, dust. The wife and Sudama did not have time to clean it. Even such was the hurry with which they came. Krishna clapped his hands in glee and said, Sudama, so you remembered that this fried rice is a great favorite of mine? Remember your sharing yours with me in those days? Sudama smiled since he remembered the incident. In the meantime, Krishna took up a handful of the rice and was munching it with great enjoyment. When he had swallowed a mouthful, he took up another fistful and was about to take it to his lips. And Rukmini, who was Lakshmi Devi, caught his hand and stopped him with a smile. With her eyes she spoke to him and said, My lord, the one handful which you have already eaten is enough to fill the house of your bhakta with all the wealth of the world. Another mouthful, I will also have to go away from you and stay in his house. Sudama saw none of this. He was happy in the company of his friends, and the whole night they spent happily together. Early in the morning, when the sun had risen, Sudama thought that he should not strain the hospitality of Krishna too much and said, I have been wanting to see you for a long time, Krishna. I have heard that you have done great deeds and you are an honored prince and that you are the beloved cousin of the great Pandavas. I have been keeping track of news of you and I do not have to tell you what I think of you day and night, that I think of you day and night. I will have to go back now, but only my body will go. I will leave my heart with you. Wonderful. That feat is good. Leave the heart with the Lord and go where you want. Krishna and his wives prostrated before Sudama, and then he left for his home. Krishna walked part of the way with him and then went back with a tender leave-taking. Sudama felt ashamed of himself when he thought of the reason for his coming to Dwaraka. He felt happy that he had the good sense to not ask Krishna for anything. His wife had told him, ask. He's a big man, he will give you something. Relieve you. He could not open his mouth. He felt happy that he had the good sense not to ask Krishna for anything. He was not lamenting, oh, I should have asked. With his mind thinking back on the dream-like experience he had of having spent a day with Krishna, Sudama reached his own city. His body thrilled even now when he thought how warmly Krishna had embraced him with dirty old clothes. I am the lowest of the low and he is the Lord of the Lords and he embraced me. Is it not wonderful? He said to himself. Again he spoke to himself. His chest, which is the abode of Lakshmi, touched his hard and bony body. His eyes were full of tears of love when he embraced me. He made me sit on his own cot and his wife fanned me with her tender hands. He touched these feet of mine, feet full of dust and full of corns and rough with walking in the ground incessantly. And these feet he took in his hands, washed them and took the water and placed it on his head. Can anything be more gracious than this gesture of my friend? Of late I have become a good yogi, I keep my emotions under control. Not bad. Last time in Vrindavan I couldn't go through half of the story. Now the Lord has said, keep calm. Don't go up and down. Sarvatra samabuddhaya. But sometimes this sarvatra samabuddhaya is terrible. You should let go sometimes. Let go and rejoice. Tena tyaktena bhunjita. The Upanishad said in a different way. I'm saying, when emotions are there, deep devotional emotions, don't control. If I don't control, then I can't read. Don't control and let go and rejoice. But as I grow older, his body grows older, it's beginning to learn more and more self-control. Good. He will be happy. So, for those who have found refuge in his feet, nothing is impossible. Said Sudama, no, I'm not saying. I know why he did not give me anything else but his love. And I didn't ask. He knows that the possession of wealth is the easiest way to make one forget him. And he loves me so much that he does not want me to forget him. How infinite is his goodness to me. Sudama was approaching his house. While he was going towards his house, he was attracted by the sight of a beautiful mansion which was seen from a distance. He thought to himself, what a beautiful sight. I have never seen it before. It seems to be made of light. So lovely it is. It seems to be so near my house. And yet, how is it that I have not noticed this all these years? Am I so absent-minded? I remember, right, all my neighbors are like me. No one has wealth enough to have a house like this. With his mind busy with thoughts like these, he was walking when several people who looked like divine beings received him and took him to the house, door of the house. Sudama said, have I come back to Dwarka? I mean, who knows with this mischievous friend of mine, Sudama asked himself, and when he looked up and down, his wife, looking like the goddess Lakshmi, came forward to the door and falling at his feet, welcomed him with tears. He was amazed. His wife looking so beautiful and so much like a woman from heavens. He entered his house, which was like a mansion of Indra. He stood silent as his eyes took in the picture. His mind was busy with thoughts which chased each other. He told himself, it is the good fortune of having seen the Lord which has blessed me with so much wealth. Krishna the Yadava, Krishna my friend and playmate, was seen by me in his rich surroundings. He gives even when his favor is not solicited. I didn't open my mouth. I didn't ask for anything. And this way of giving is like the bounty of the rain cloud. The cloud, though it is capable of filling up the entire ocean with water, is so humble about the good it wants to do that it works silently. And when a farmer is sleeping, it pours rain on his crops without letting him know that it has come and gone. Krishna does not want to talk about wealth that he is capable of giving, since to him it is such a minor matter. Somebody said long ago, "Seek ye first the kingdom of the Lord and the rest shall be added unto you." That happened to Sudama. He considers love and bhakti to be much superior to wealth. And so he never did want to talk about this. He did not want to embarrass me by saying, otherwise I would get embarrassed. Maybe he thought, he didn't want to say, "I will give you wealth." Since he does not consider wealth to be equal to bhakti. And in his eyes I saw that my love for him seemed to please him so much. To him, the handful of rice that I took was dearer than all the nectar and honey which was there for him in plenty. With these thoughts, Sudama accepted the gift of the Lord. And with his wife, he enjoyed the wealth that was granted to him. All the while, however, he and his wife were ever devoted to Krishna, and his feet were always placed in their hearts. Gradually, they practiced the art of detachment from worldly things, unaffected by the early poverty and now the later wealth. They lived happily with their minds full of thoughts of Krishna. Goodies of the Lord. Yeah. Now we can afford to go a little slow. It's like sadhana. In the beginning, if you go full force, in the end you can afford to go slow. Vision of the future. There was once a total eclipse of the sun. Tradition had it that during the eclipse, people should go to a holy spot and bathe in the waters before and after the eclipse. The great Parashurama, the Bhargava, had performed the tarpana for his parents with the blood of the Kshatriyas. The spot was where the 5 lakes had been filled with blood. And this place had been sanctified by the gods, and it was called Syamantaka. So they were in Syamantaka. All the kings of Bharatavarsha journeyed towards Syamantaka when they heard there was an eclipse of the sun. Aniruddha and Kritavarman were asked to remain in Dwaraka guarding the city, and the rest of the Yadavas left for the holy place. The journey proved to be a pleasurable trip for all of them, and the women and children joined in the group, so there was a great crowd traveling towards Samanta. And to the same holy waters had come other kings from other countries, Matsya, Koshala, Vidarbha, Kekiya and Kamboja. The Kauravas were also there, surrounding Duryodhana. All his friends and all his kinsmen had come. To the great delight of Krishna, Nanda Gopa had come with Yashoda. And the Gopas were there with the gopis. Kunti was there. She greeted her brother Vasudeva as though she had a grievance against him. She said, "You are my eldest brother. I consider myself singularly unfortunate that you should have been so indifferent about me and my misfortune. It is the rule of life that one whom the gods do not favor is not treated with affection and respect due to him by others. Their near kinsmen, brothers, cousins, even sons don't care for them." Vasudeva was sorely hurt by this unjust accusation, and he said, "Look, my dear sister, please do not blame us who have been but puppets in the hands of fate. The world and its welfare are in the hands of the Lord, and man is helpless," and so on. With these words, Vasudeva sat silent for a while and walked away from there, leaving Kunti to regret her hasty words which she had spoken on impulse. The entire Kshatriya clan was there, assembled on the holy spot by name Syamantaka. They were all there. Bhishma, Drona, Dhritarashtra, Gandhari, Kunti with her sons and their wives, Vidura, Kripa, Kunti Bhoja, Viratha, Bhishmaka, Nagnajit, Purijit, Drupada, Shalya, Drishtaketu, the king of Kashi, all the lords of all these countries, Madra, Kekaya and Mithila, Yuddhamanyu and Susharma, they were all there. Krishna looked at all of them, at their powerful forms and their arrogant laughter, at their wealth and their pride. It seemed to him as though they had all assembled there to see the ground, to inspect it and see if it is good enough to be their final bed in years to come. Maybe they were looking at their funeral pyre. Krishna and only Krishna, with the exception of the rishis, knew what was to happen to all of them when the Kurukshetra war was to be fought. That was the purpose for which he was born. He knew it. He was born to kill adharma and establish dharma once again, to plant the seed of dharma on this holy spot, which seemed to be fated for blood baths every time. Parashurama once filled up the 5 lakes with the blood of Kshatriyas. As for Krishna, the entire field of Kurukshetra would be soaked with the blood of Kshatriyas. On that red soil would be planted the seed of dharma. Krishna then sat silent for a long time, and his mind's eye saw all the events that were to happen. It made him sad. Sthitaprajna that he was, beyond the effect of opposites, and yet even he was unhappy at the thought of the task ahead of him. Painful indeed it was to contemplate without emotion this celebration. And later, a blood bath in the same place. He roused himself out of his reverie before anyone could notice him. But there's one person who always watches him. Balarama had been watching him all the time. He came near and said, "Come, Krishna, shake off this despondency into which you seem to have fallen. I can guess what you're thinking about, but it is not going to help this sadness. Adishesha is advising him, hey, come on. Whatever has to happen will happen. As they say in Palghat, what things when will happen, oh, that things then will happen, happen. So don't look like this. Ignorance should have been much more welcome than this path. Forget it, brother, and come with me. That who has come to talk to us. Krishna smiled sadly and took his brother's hand, which had been held out to him, and stood up. In the near distance they saw Nanda Gopa. They all ran and fell at his feet, shed tears of joy. Devaki went near Yashoda and said, my dear sister, I just bore these sons. They have been your sons and they will always be your sons. How can I forget the favor you did us by taking these sons of mine in your care? You guarded them like the eyelids guard the eyes, though you knew that you were courting the displeasure of Kamsa. You did not hesitate even for a moment. How can I thank you? Yashoda said, you think of me. You did think of me. It is strange that you should talk like this. We are the ones who should thank you, not just me and my Lord, but the entire Vrindavan. Can we ever forget the glorious years when I had all these boys all for myself? Can I forget the happiness which was all mine? Happiness of being known as Krishna's mother? The thoughts of those days which are keeping us alive. Or else, who can live after being parted from Balarama and Krishna? Can anybody live? It's those thoughts which are keeping us alive. Krishna looked beyond the shoulder of his mother. Why? At some distance assembled the Gopis. Their eyes, which had been starved so long for a look at his face, were now feasting themselves. There was surprise in their eyes, since they saw that he was now a man, and not the young Krishna whom they had known. Krishna who used to tease them on the banks of the Yamuna, who hid their water pots and give them back to them only after they had given him what he asked for, who had danced with them all through the night on the white sands of the river bank. Now only Krishna is they are seeing as a grown-up. Huh? So when you think of Rasa Krida, don't get wrong ideas. Who had danced with them all through the night on the white sands of the river bank, on that moonlit night when all the world held its breath watching the rasa. Krishna, who had stolen their garments when they were bathing on that cold morning, the month of Margashirsha, even now their faces would be suffused with red when they thought of the many things which had happened when Krishna was in Vrindavan. And now, after all these years, Krishna was there. They could see him. They were feeling nervous. So many kings and their queens were there. They were so different from the gopis, and this made them worried lest someone should point out to them and say, "Hey, look at those women, they are the gopis." They are the gopis, and it has been said that Krishna was a great favorite with them. They were feeling worried, all these kings and queens, and then laugh as though they were amused. Krishna was theirs, but yet he looked so distant, so far away from them. Krishna looked at them and he knew what was passing in their innocent minds. He got up and went to the spot where they were grouped and smiled his own little charming smile. They were drinking with their eyes. So beautiful was he to look at. He walked past them and they followed. When no one was around and when he was alone with them, he embraced each one of them and made them happy. They forgot all their anger against him and all their grievances. They were happy that their Krishna was the same Krishna they had known. The wealth and royalty and the city life which had all been imposed on him had not changed him a bit. He was the same guy. They stood with him smiling and weeping with joy, and Krishna spoke to them with great affection. His voice was full of tenderness when he spoke. He said, "My dear companions, my beloved friends of long ago, how far away it seems since I last saw you. You must have been thinking of me as a man who spoke lies. You must have been saying, this Krishna is ungrateful. He has forgotten all the love we gave him. You must have said, Krishna told us a lie when he told us that he would come back. He's deceived us. What do you expect of him?" He smiled at them when they looked down ashamed that he had guessed all that they had been thinking. Krishna continued, "I know all that you would have felt, but I do not blame you. But then, I could not help it, my friends. I was caught up in a snarl of intrigue and deceit, and I had to play a different role from the carefree cowherd's life, which I enjoyed so much. Then, I had nothing to worry in my mind except the tryst that I had to have with you and how to arrange them. Now it is different. Now I have been made to bear the burden of the kinsmen who are dependent on me for their well-being. Believe me, you do not know how often I have thought of the days I spent in Vrindavan, and often I have wished that I would go back to those days and to you all. But it's all in the past." Krishna was silent for a while. His face lost its teasing look, and the smile vanished from his face and from his eyes. And then he shook himself. And then what happened we will see after half an hour. He shook himself, yes. Hari Hari. Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shivasati Gaur Bhakta Vrinda. Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. Klim Krishnaya Govindaya Gopi Janavallabhaya Swaha. Shri Krishna Arpanamastu. Om Shri Gurubhyo Namah. Homage of the rishis. The rishis had come there to Samanta Panchaka. since they wanted to spend some time with Rama and Krishna. The entire galaxy of the rishis were there. Vyasa, Narada, Shavana, Asita, Devala, Vishwamitra, Sandananda, Bharadvaja, Gautama, Parashurama, with his disciples, Vasishta, Galava, Brigu, Pulastya, Kashyapa, Atri, Markandeya, Brihaspati, Angirasa, Agastya, Yajnavalkya, Vamadeva, and many others. All the major rishis, all major and minor, had gathered. Because when all these great rishis came, all the kings stood up as one man. This rare honor was indeed a godsend to them. Krishna and Balarama rose up from where they were sitting and with great excitement honored the rishis along with the other kings. When the Arghya and the Achamaniya and Padya and other forms of worshipping, the honored guests were offered and accepted, the rishis were seated at the sabha, which glowed like Satyaloka, with purity and with the Brahmajnanis. Assemblies of kings were so poor and so insignificant in comparison with this congregation of rishis, each of them having accumulated tapas, enough if they wanted to destroy the entire world or to create a new world. These great men had come to pay their homage to Rama and Krishna. They didn't come for anything else. The young men of the Yadava house who had been born and who were living as ordinary human beings, these avatars of Narayana. Krishna said, there is no doubt that we have achieved the greatest of punya in our lives, since we have been blessed with the sight of so many great men all at the same time. And we are blessed in the fact that we have been, at one single stroke, cleansed of all our sins because of you, the rishis. The elders have taught us several methods of washing away one's sins. Bathing in the rivers, which is holy and is one method. Another is worshipping the Lord by invoking Him and making Him reside in an image made of stone. How can these compare with the punya obtained by the sight of men like you? We can touch you. We can converse with you. We can take the dust of your feet and the water with which we wash your feet, when sprinkled on our heads, will cure us of the disease of birth and death. That does not mean that tirthas do not purify, that worshipping the Lord in the form of an image does not purify. They do. But it takes a long time. Sadhus, however, purify us the moment their eyes light on us. The fire does not purify by sight alone. The sun does not. The moon and the stars which crowd the heavens do not purify by just the sight of them. Earth and the other four elements do not do it. Even the worship of the word as Brahman. What is the word as Brahman? The pranava. Om. does not purify immediately. All these do purify in the sense that when they are worshipped, they rid the devotee of all sins. But the cause of the sins is ajnana, ignorance of the truth. That is not removed by these objects of worship. But the wise ones, like you, remove one's sins as well as one's ignorance at the same instant. And they do not need a long period of worship to grant us this. They rise when they rest on us with kindness, perform this miracle automatically. This is Krishna Satsanga. Man who suffers from the sense of I in spite of his knowing that this body is made up of just so much water, some bones, and a large area of skin. You know that body is mostly made of water. Apart from the water they pour daily in the evenings. A quantity of fat and blood. Man who suffers from the disease of mind, about his wife and his children and his family, is taught the simple lesson that by visiting the tirthas and by worshipping the little figures made of earth and stone, he will win the grace of the Lord. The really wise one is one who worships sadhus like you, gains salvation immediately. The rishis could not follow what he meant when Krishna spoke these words of praise. Now, if the rishis didn't follow, then who will follow? He was the Parabrahman, and he spoke words which praised them. They tried to find reason why he did it. Why are you praising us? This was the charming quality of their greatness which Krishna loved. They were humble. They did not know and could not grasp how much they meant for Krishna. They smiled to themselves when the truth was the opposite as far as they were concerned. They came to see him so that the sight of him would cure them of the many bondages of the world. And he was speaking like a mortal. Rishis worshipped him with their minds and with their thoughts, and Krishna accepted their worship and their homage with his eyes and his mind. They knew him for what he was, but they would not speak about it. Krishna knew it, and he smiled at them as if to say, I thank you for helping me keep up this appearance. I'm just Krishna, the Yadava, and Rama is my elder brother. This is all they know and all they need to know about us. So thank you very much for not openly talking about it. The rishis said with their minds, your actions, my Lord, are ever beyond the comprehension of mortal man. The same earth is used to fashion different shaped pots. Each pot assumes an entity of its own, but they are the same earth. Even so, you have yourself assumed different shapes and forms to create, to protect, to destroy this universe. Untouched as you are by the bondages you impose on yourself in these different forms, people get deluded that you are an ordinary mortal and that you go through the same pain and pleasure cycle as they do. You have been born again and again, and the purpose of your birth every time is to re-establish dharma, which threatens to get eclipsed of it. You are the Parabrahman. We worship you in that form, Your blessed feet, which have granted to Ganga her purity, have been in our minds for a long time. It is to touch them with our eyes and worship them silently that we have come. Please accept our homage. They took leave of everyone there and made as if to go their ways. They finished paying homage. They got up and they were leaving. Vasudeva followed them and stopped them, said, please accept my worship. I have a favor to ask of you. Please teach me the path. Vasudeva, not Vasudeva, Vasudeva. Please teach me the path to be followed, the path which will rid me of sinfulness. Narada was amused by his words. He spoke to an audience, to his companions, and said, what a foolish man are you, Vasudeva. Ignorant. He is the Lord of Lords as his son, as his constant companion. And yet thinking of Krishna as his child, he is ignorant of his good fortune. And he comes to us and tell him how to get rid of sinfulness. It is indeed true that constant association with anyone breeds indifference toward that person. It has happened to Vasudeva. He has read it all wrong. When Krishna was born, Narayana revealed himself to this man, and yet now, because of having him with him all the time, too familiar. Vasudeva has forgotten his rare privilege and behaves like other common men. A man living forever on the banks of the Ganga does often go in search of a tirtha to purify himself. Even so, Vasudeva, with Krishna by his side, wants to know ways of worship which will cure him of his sinfulness. Strange are the ways of the Lord, said Narada. The rishis said, the worship of Lord Narayana is the path you should follow. This is the easiest, the best and the quickest way to find salvation. A king should at some time in his life perform yagas and do acts of charity, and he will find salvation easily. Vasudeva requested them to oblige him by officiating at a yajna which he wanted to perform. They agreed to do so and preparations were made. The yaga was performed and the rishis acted as the ritviks because they could spend more time with Krishna, that's why. Vasudeva was very happy that they had come to Samanta Panchaka since it led to so many great events. The meeting of all his friends who ruled the other countries, the reunion with Nanda Gopa, and the meeting of the rishis who helped him to perform the yajna. He felt happy and very contented. Once, Devaki called Balarama and Krishna to her side and said, the rishis tell me that you are the incarnations of Narayana. I believe it because they told me so. To me, however, you are my sons, and I am happy in the thought that I am your mother. I know that years back when your guru wanted his dead son brought back to life as a Guru Dakshina, you both performed the seemingly impossible task of entering the city of Yama and getting him back. I have long felt sad at the thought of the sons whom I have borne before you both were born, sons whom Kamsa killed, I wondered if it would be possible for me to see those sons of mine with your help. Everybody says you are Narayana. Rama and Krishna entered the world Sutala with the help of their yoga. Bali was the Lord there and he welcomed them with great joy. Bali was living in Sutala. He honored them since he knew who they were, and he praised them with words which only the really wise could speak. Every year they celebrate Onam in Kerala. They say that Bali comes from Sutala to visit his country. They welcome him with flowers. But the best part of Onam is the food. Very tasty sadhya is made, food. Funny thing is, in a traditional sadhya, they don't even use garlic or onion. The food is very nice. Bali was the Lord there, and he welcomed them with great joy. He honored them since he knew who they were, and he praised them with words which only the really wise could speak. Krishna accepted the worship of this favorite bhakta of his and said, "We have come to ask a favor of you. During the great Swayambhu Manu's Manvantara, Marichi and Urna had 6 sons. Once Brahma tried to make love to his own daughter Saraswati. The 6 brothers, seeing this, laughed at him. Because of this, they were cursed to be born as asuras. They were born as the sons of Hiranyakashipu. They were later born as the sons of Devaki, which is why they got killed. And as soon as they were born, they were killed by Kamsa. They are now with you. I will take them from here." He didn't say, "Shall I take them?" They are now with you in Sutala and I am taking them with me. They will then be free from the curse which has dogged them for so long, and they will be able to reach heavens. Balarama and Krishna took the 6 sons of Devaki with them. They were Smara, Udgita, Parishvanga, Patanga, Shudrabrit, and Grini. They reached Dwaraka, and the brothers led the 6 to the presence of Devaki. She was overcome with joy at seeing the sons who were dead. She placed them on her lap and bathed them with her tears. They were now free of their curse, and after prostrating before Vasudeva and Devaki, they entered the heavens. Devaki was satisfied, and they went back. The ache and longing which Devaki had been having all these years now left her, and she did not mourn the fact that her sons were restored to her only to vanish soon. It was okay with her. Now I want to see what we can do. Now while this was going on, Parikshit had a doubt again. Every now and then he stopped, Sukha. 1 minute, sir. Said doubt. Parikshit had a doubt which he wanted to be cleared by Sukadeva. He said, "My lord, Ever since you have been telling me about the grace of the Lord, His infinite mercy and His bounty, I have been noticing one thing. Asuras, Devas and human beings have all been known to worship the different forms of the same one Brahman. One fact stands out clear. Lord Mahadeva is ever described as the one who has abandoned all the riches of the world, or of the heavens for that matter. He wears no ornaments except a mala made of mundamala, heads of corpses, found in the burning ground which he frequents. He is dressed in the skin of a tiger or an elephant. His jewels are snakes, and he smears ashes on his body. Ashes again from the burning ground. He lives on the top of the cold and harsh mountain where there is eternal snow. His attendants are the Pramata Ganas, and it is evident that there is not a sign of wealth anywhere around him. People who live in his name have a lot of wealth, but Shiva doesn't have any wealth. Narayana, on the other hand, is described as entirely the opposite. His spouse is Lakshmi, opposite. The goddess of wealth. And he wears yellow silk and earrings made of gold. On his chest gleams the jewel called Kaustuba. He smears sandal paste on his body, and he wears a crown set with precious stones. Even the sword he holds in his hand and the bow are all inlaid with precious stones and gold. And yet, my Lord, those who have chosen Mahadeva as their Ishta Devata are blessed with wealth, riches beyond the dreams of anyone, and they enjoy the pleasures of the world to which the giver is a stranger. On the other hand, those who have chosen Narayana as their Ishta Devata find themselves always poor. They have never been blessed with wealth like the others, and their lives are also full of suffering than those of the others. Tell me why it is so. Very legitimate though. The gift of each of these, Mahadeva and Narayana, is the opposite of what they are described to possess. Clear this doubt for me. Sukadeva said, it is indeed a pertinent question you have asked. I will try to answer it as best as I can. What a man reaps as a result of his worship depends on his knowledge of the Brahman. If he is not fully conversant with the real truth, he then chooses his Ishta Devata according to his wish. Right? The absolute truth, which is the Brahman, has no form, which has none of the three gunas, is however conditioned by the three gunas, and the different conditionings have been given different names. One who worships one or other of these conditioned forms of the Brahman as his Ishta Devata, worshipped it as such and gains his small desires very soon. The three gunas are said to be represented by the Trimurtis. Brahma, the creator, stands for Rajas, activity. Mahadeva for Tamoguna, the destroyer. And Narayana for Sattva-guna, purity. In reality, these three gunas together cause the universe. But for the sake of explaining the Absolute in terms which are so inadequate, these definitions are chosen. When the Brahman assumes the form of one of the gunas, he is called by that name. Mahadeva or Shiva or Shankara is ever to be the symbol of the Aham Tattva, the Maya associated with Aham. There are three forms he is said to take up. The first is pure tamas. The second is tamas blended with rajas. And the third is tamas blended with sattva. Mahadeva therefore is ever endowed with these gunas. Now, Aham Tattva is actually the three powers. Vaikarika, which is Rajasa, Taijasa, which is Sattvic, and pure Tamas. Out of these forms of Aham Tattva, 15 vikharas, that is distortions, alterations are formed. The 5 karmendriyas, the 5 jnanendriyas, the 5 elements and the mind. When a man of little knowledge worships one of these guna-infected forms of the Absolute, his desires are soon fulfilled. Narayana is known to us without any of the 3 gunas, who is not conditioned by any of these gunas, who is Purusha, who was there before the gunas appeared and who still exists after they appeared, who is apart from Prakriti, which is but a manifestation of Purusha, the illuminator of the illumined, the one apart, which is the Sakshi, or the witness for the entire manifestation called the universe. When one realizes Narayana to be his devotion to Narayana actually makes him gunaless, which means that he has no desires. Wealth has no meaning for him. He is granted tranquility. That is the reason. When you worship Narayana in his pure form, Narayana is considered to be Aishwarya, and Aishwarya is said to be Lakshmi, the goddess of wealth. But there are 2 kinds of wealth. Right? One is physical wealth, and the other is spiritual wealth. So when you worship Narayana and say, I want you, I don't want anything else, then you get spiritual wealth. If you say, give me Lakshmi, you get Lakshmi. That is the reason. So those who have lost everything because they asked, may I lose everything but not lose you? That is why. How many people are there? It is easy to say, but when the rug is pulled from under the feet, we want everything back. Apparently there was an old lady who used to go to nearby neighborhood Devi temple and pray loudly so that everybody heard what she said. Oh Devi, why are you keeping me here? I am become so old, take me away, take me. All the time, all the keys of the storeroom were in her, tucked here. Take me away. So the priest who managed the temple, he heard it every evening. He got fed up. He said, this woman is a hypocrite. She comes loudly, especially her voice is louder when the daughter-in-laws are around. So one day, being himself a dark man, he went and stood behind. Now Devi had many arms. He also put 2 arms and stood there behind. So she came and said, "Oh Devi, why are you leaving me here? I have no interest in this world." Meanwhile, she is looking here for the keys. "Take me away." We said, "Come." She screamed and ran for her life. And while she was going, she said, "Who will look after my grandchildren?" So we say things, but we don't know what we say. It is better to say, "Look, I worship you, you are the Lord, you do what you think is good for me and right for me. I am not in a fit state even to think and understand what I need, so do what is proper." This is a better. Don't aim too high and don't aim too low. Leave it also to the Lord. Best. Be safe. Anyway. Story of Rika. Rika went to the holy place called Kedar and worshipped the Lord Mahadeva, who is known in that kshetra as Kedareshwar. Rika sacrificed his own flesh and prayed to the Lord. He built a great fire and cut pieces of flesh from his body and threw them into the fire as offerings to Mahadeva. No mean feat. 7 days he performed this unique sacrifice. And on the 8th day he was desperate because the Lord had not appeared before him. He took the waters of the Abhisheka of the Lord on his head. With his sword he tried to cut off his head, as Ravana did in ancient times. Mahadeva emerged out of the fire and held the 2 arms of Rika. His divine touch made the devotee whole again. The Lord asked him, "What do you desire?" Rika said, "Please grant me only one desire, which I have for a long time. Anyone whom I touch on the head must die at once." Rika then said, "I want to test the power which you have granted me, so I want to touch your head now." Mahadeva had to leave the spot and run in the direction of his mountain home, with the Asura following him. He passed all the many worlds of the Nagas, the Gandharvas and the Devas. He arrived in Vaikunta, the abode of Narayana. Narayana saw the coming of the Asura. He knew that he was trying to pursue Mahadeva. So, with his yoga maya, Narayana is always up to some mischief. His yoga maya assumed the form of a young brahmachari. He had a monji around his waist and he had a sacred thread from which was a pendant, a Krishna jina. He had a stick of the Ashwatha tree in his hand. On his neck gleamed a japamala. So he looked just like a brahmachari. He was a little like Vamana, who had come to please those who had not seen him then. he encountered Vrika and said, Vrika, you seem to be very tired. What is bothering you? Rest for a while. And tell me what you have been doing which has brought on this tired look on your face, your limbs, and this worried look on your face. If you think I can be of some help in what you are pursuing, I will then do it for you. I like you since you seem to be very naive and a person who can be deceived easily. In this world, man should help his fellow beings if it has power to do that. So I will help you. Vrika was charmed by the sweet words of this young brahmachari who was glowing as though with his own glory. He told the boy all about his sacrifice and the boon he had obtained. He said, all I wanted to know was to see if the boon would work. But Mahadeva has escaped from me and I am pursuing him. Narayana laughed and said, indeed, you have been foolish. From the moment I saw you, I knew that you are foolish. Don't you know that Mahadeva's words can never be believed? Vrika was taken aback. He asked, what do you mean? Is he not the Lord who granted the boon to Ravana and Vana? Narada told me so. And Narada doesn't tell lies. Narayana said, I don't know about that. But Daksha himself, who was a Prajapati, did not honor Mahadeva. We do not have much faith in him. Do you know why he ran away from you? It is not because he is afraid. It is because he does not want you to find out that his boon is false. Because you will touch him, and if he doesn't die, you will realize, oh God, this is not a... Which is why he ran away. Rika stood with a perplexed look on his face. Narayana said, all right, you listen to me. Just try and see if his words are true. Place your hand on your head first and see. I can assure you nothing will happen. We will then go together and look for him and take him to task as to why he did this to you, bluffed to you. So charmed was Vrika with the words and the voice of the young brahmachari that he lost his power of thinking. Before he knew what he was doing, he placed his hand over his head. Next moment, his head split into two and he fell down lifeless. The sky was filled with the jubilant cry of the Devas. Narayana then went to Mahadeva and said, this sinner was destroyed because of his many sins. A man who insults good people will come to no good. When such is the case, need I say anything about one who has offended you? Krishna and Uddhava. Uddhava was one of the Yadavas who was always with Krishna and who was very near to him. He saw the evil omens and he heard the words of Krishna. He waited for the time to see Krishna alone. He wanted him all for himself. When he did find him alone, he went to Krishna and falling at his feet, held on firmly to the feet and said, Krishna, Yogesha, you are the Lord of Lords and you have made a decision. You are going to destroy this Yadava clan and then you will go away. I guessed it when you did not avert the curse of the Brahmins, even though you could have. If you had wished to, you are the Lord Narayana. You could have saved us all if you wanted to. You have a purpose in coming to this decision. I am not here to ask you why all this is happening. I have come to ask you a boon and a favor. What do you want to ask me? Asked Krishna, with his hand in that of his friend. He held his hand first and he asked him, what do you want? Why have you come? You, Krishna, said Uddhava, I have only one thing I want. I want you and your nearness. All these years I have been always with you, and not a moment has passed when I did not see you or talk to you. If you leave me, what will happen to me? I cannot remain here for even half a moment when your holy feet have become lost to me. I have ever been with you and I cannot be alone after you are gone. Please take me with you and bless me. Now Uddhava, after having said this, was sobbing his heart out. And Krishna looked at him with his eyes full of love. He could never bear to see his bhaktas suffer. The Lord's love for his bhaktas are far greater than the love he had even for Lakshmi. With infinite tenderness, Krishna took the hands of Uddhava in his hands and said, you have spoken nothing but the truth when you said that my purpose is to lead the Yadava house to its destruction. Okay. They will all die by their own hands. Brahma, Mahadeva and the Devas came to me and asked me to go back to my abode. Once, years ago, at the request of Brahma, I promised to take a human form along with Adishesha. And the reason for this birth was to establish Dharma. I have achieved it. I have nothing else to achieve now. There is just a week more left for me to finish the last of my tasks, the annihilation of the house of Yadavas. And as for Dwaraka, the sea will break her bounds and enter the city when I am gone. My dear Uddhava, the moment I leave this earth, her glory will diminish and Kali Yuga, which is waiting to be born, will occupy her completely. Do not live in the world abandoned by me. Do not live in the world abandoned by me. Men during Kali Yuga will take great delight in committing sin. You'll have to spend the rest of your time, the rest of your lifetime assigned to you in this world with your mind completely detached from your kinsmen and from everyone who have been all these days near to you and dear to you. Let your mind be set on me only. With an even temperament, move in this world, waiting for the end. Let me tell you something, Uddhava. I will describe what Maya is. You will then know how to avoid getting entangled in its web. When the senses are in action, they perceive the world outside. There are sights which the eyes see, sounds which the ears hear, tastes which the tongue relishes, and so on. These experiences are called manomaya, meaning they are born of the mind and so are considered transient. This is Maya. To a mind which runs in pursuit of these, which feed the senses, a kind of delusion occurs. Out of this delusion is born what is called gunadosha. Gunadosha is a condition when the Atman becomes tainted with the gunas. It's a different definition of gunadosha. Gunadosha is the condition when the Atman becomes tainted with the gunas. This involves him further into the sea called samsara. Then Chavanaprasha, Dashamula, Arishta cannot save him. And it is not easy for him to extricate himself from this morass. You should therefore control your senses and control your mind too, and stop these from straying into dangerous ground. Since you have been with me so long, you will not stray from the constant contemplation on the Brahman. Uddhava shook his head sadly and said, "No, Krishna, it will not be easy to withdraw the mind from the objects of the senses. Not possible, I would say. When I say it, I who has ever been devoted to you, what then those who have no bhakti for you? This lesson you are teaching about keeping the senses under control is so hard to learn and harder to practice. Caught as I am in the snare made up of eye and mind, I need your guidance to shake off this mare from my feet and reach firm ground. Tell me how." Krishna said, "Most of those who have tasted the worldly pleasures and have finally arrived at the truth have been mostly those who have done it themselves. They have tried again and again and have finally succeeded in bringing their senses under control. First the senses and then the mind. The stigma of the vasanas has to be erased by one's own effort. It is one's mind which should be used to achieve this detachment. Man is given the power of discrimination. With the help of this, he should arrive at the truth. Two things confront a person in search of truth. They are pratyaksha and anumana. Pratyaksha is what he can perceive with his senses, and anumana is what he conceives with his mind. These two are the obstacles. No help is possible. One has to work on it. The fearless ones who are not afraid to follow their quest, their search to the end, those who are proficient in the two schools of thought, Sankhya and Yoga, even they look only for me. The human mind comes to the conclusion that I am something apart from the things which can be perceived. When the mind is illumined, when the senses are aroused, when the eye sees or the skin feels, it is not on its own accord but because of something else, some other power which has got to be present. And this is the anumana at which the mind arrives. And because of pratyaksha, which is the reality around us, and anumana, which is a speculation based on the reality, goes further, deeper into the real nature of pratyaksha. With these two, the wise arrive at the truth, which is myself. I will explain this further with the help of a story. Once, there was a conversation between Yadu, my ancestor, and Dattatreya, who was an Avadhuta. Yadu was once wandering on the face of the earth, and he came across a young man who was naked and was walking without fear. Yadu recognized him as an Avadhuta. He accosted him and said, "You appear to me to be a happy man." Well, please let me tell you, that doesn't mean all people who take off their clothes and walk are Avadhuta. Or all people who have escaped from mental houses are Avadhutas. No. Avadhutas are a special category. Great beings. Nowadays it has become a fashion. If some mad person is sitting in the railway station, everybody goes, agarbattis, does this. And even eats the food that he has eaten, which is dangerous. It may be infected. It's not like that. It's a very special case. I know somebody who goes and waits in a place because somebody is there who is going to spit and he wants to open his mouth and take it. Well, during COVID season I discouraged him, but Yadu recognized him as an Avadhuta. He accosted him and said, "You appear to me to be a happy man. Your face has a tranquility which can be seen only in one who has found inner peace. Men in this world run after transient things like wealth and the pleasing of the senses. In their midst, you seem to stand apart. When a forest is caught in a conflagration, if an elephant is able to escape from it and soaks itself in the waters of the Ganga, the satisfaction it will have is seen in your face, since you seem to have escaped from the fire of desire and the pursuit of things of the earth, which is the lot of common man. The joy you seem to have inside you is reflected in your calm face, if you will be willing enough to tell me how you arrived at this state." Dattatreya said, "O king, this was culled by me from various sources. I have finally reached the end of my quest, and in my wanderings in search of peace, what happened? I have finally reached the end of my quest, and in my wanderings in search of peace and in search of truth, my teachers have been many. Not one, many. I will tell you who they were and who taught me how to live without being affected by desires. My teachers are the earth, the wind, the sky, the water, the fire, the moon, the sun, a pigeon, a python, the ocean, a moth, a honeybee, a keeper of a beehive, an elephant, a deer, and a fish. These are all my gurus. And a woman by the name Pingala, a small animal like a squirrel which is called a kurari, a child, a young girl, an archer, a snake, a spider, and a wasp which builds his own shell. These 24 were my teachers, whom my mind chose as my gurus. From their behavior, I selected for myself the lessons which were essential for the advancement of my search after truth. I will elaborate on this and tell you what lesson each one of these was able to teach me. Even if he is oppressed by the things of the world, firm man never moves away from the right path. This I learned from the earth. The power of enduring anything is what the earth has taught. Nowadays, by the way, it is ill-treated. Surely, if it doesn't have endurance, it should have split into two and swallowed us. A wise man will ever be interested in doing good to others, and he is convinced that he is born on this earth as a human being just for that purpose. That is the lesson I learned from the mountain. To stand firm and to be unmoved. In the lesson, these two taught me, the earth and the mountain. Man should learn to live with the barest minimum which is needed for him to live. He should not indulge. The really wise man, though he is placed in the midst of the objects of senses, should learn to live without getting attached to any of them. The wind taught me this lesson. The man who has realized the truth about himself will know that the Atman which is inhabiting this body made up of the 5 elements, has to pass through different stages of childhood, youth and old age. But the one who is wise will know that he need not suffer the delusion that all this is real. He can easily pass through this world without getting caught up by it. Like the wind which blows through different places, but is never attached to any spot. One of the most important truths about the Atman, I learned from the sky. When the wind blows, a number of clouds are found all across the sky. It seems to us that the sky is covered by these clouds. But in reality, they have not covered the sky. There is no contact between them and the sky, though the sky seems to be completely covered by the clouds. Even so is the Supreme Brahman. The 5 elements have been used to form this entire universe, and the Atman is encased in the body made of these elements. But in reality, Atman inside you is not involved with the body which is holding it, and the Brahman is apart from the visible world which is born out of it, its manifestation. The waters of a river are ever pure, full of love for mankind, sweet in nature, and apt to purify those who come to it. The good men of the world are like the river which cleanses all. They do so by their sight, their touch, and their word. The river, therefore, is one of my gurus. Fire, which is full of its own light, consumes everything but is not contaminated by it. Its heat is enough to purify what it consumes. Even so, the man who has tapas as his wealth will glow like fire, will be untainted even if he enjoys the things the world has to offer. He will not be sullied by them because he will purify them. He never discriminates between what is good and what is bad when he is given something to eat. But he is so full of tapas that nothing which touches him will taint him. Even as the fire is concealed in wood, the wood which it consumes, the Atman is concealed in the human body, is not visible to ordinary beings. The moon is another guru of mine. It taught me a lesson, a great lesson it was that I learnt. When we follow the waxing and waning of the moon, we see that From new moon stage, when there is nothing visible in the sky, to the third day, when the thin sliver is seen, there is a change in the appearance of the moon. From then on, it is evident that the moon grows bigger and bigger. And finally, on the Purnima day, the day of the full moon, it shines in all its glory. And next day, however, the glory becomes less and less, until finally we do not see the moon at all. If we consider this phenomenon properly, we see that they are just phases of the moon. The kalas, the time as they are called, the kalas, the different small parts of undergoing a change, and these lead us to the supposition that the moon grows or stops growing, gets smaller, finally is no more. Even so, the stages called birth, growth and decay which the body goes through do not affect the Atman. Man seems to be born, seems to grow up into youth, manhood, old age, and there seems to be decay and finally death. But all these stages are not applicable to the Atman, but all these stages are applicable only for the body. The Atman, nothing happens. It is eternal and indestructible. Birth dies into childhood. Childhood dies into youth. Later, youth dies into old age. And finally, into death. But these changes are for the body. And the unchanged Atman remains unchanged even after this cycle of changes. Even as the moon goes through its phases, waxes and wanes and waxes again. When the flames rise from the fire in a continuous flow, no one knows how it begins and how it ends. The particles in the fire which burn and produce the flame are kindled, burn for a while and then die. But the flame is steady and continuous, that no one is able to trace the birth and death of an individual spark of the fire. Several drops, after all, make up the river. The flow of the river is continuous, and time, which drives everything to its finality, does not reveal to us the course of the individual drop of water. The river flows, and that's all that is perceptible. Even so, in this endless journey through time, the Atman assumes several bodies, which each in itself is born and dies. But as a whole, the Atman continues its journey without any interruptions. The sun absorbs the waters with the help of its rays. When the time comes, gives it to one who desires it and wants it. He is never interested in the water except with the desire to pour it on others. Even so, the really wise man is never attached to the things which gratify the senses, but he takes them so that he may give them to others and see them benefit by what he has collected. Like wealth, like grains and such, this is the lesson I learned from the sun. Another lesson was taught by him. When the sun is reflected in different shaped vessels, or in puddles on the ground, or in the dents made by the hoofs of cows while they walk, the sun we see in these different reflecting surfaces is just a reflection of the sun and not the sun itself. Again, the reflection in each case is different. It is the same sun who is reflected. Even so, the Atman, which is enclosed in different bodies, seems to be different in each person, but in reality, It is the same Atman in all of us. The pigeon is also my guru. From a pigeon I learnt the lesson that too much attachment to anything or any person will only cause pain and unhappiness. You don't have to learn it from a pigeon, right? We all know it. There was a male pigeon and its mate. And together they built a nest on top of a tree. They were absolutely devoted to each other. They did everything together, whether it was flying, perching on a tree, lying down in the nest, eating, or hunting for food. If at any time the female bird wanted anything, the male pigeon would try his utmost to get what she wanted. So they lived happily in their nest. In course of time, the female laid eggs in the nest. Eggs hatched and the young pigeons emerged out of it. They were soft and so tender. The parent birds spent all the time in tending them, and they derived a lot of happiness out of the fact that they had these young ones all for themselves. The young ones were learning to play and gradually they sprouted wings. They delighted their parents with their attempts at learning to fly. Once the parents had gone out to collect food, the young ones were found by a hunter. They were playing near the nest. He found it easy to capture them and he placed them in his net. After collecting food for their young, the parent birds came home. As soon as they came, they found that their young ones had been caught in the hunter's nest. Mother bird was distraught with grief, so much so that she, wishing to be with the young ones, rushed into the net and was also entrapped. The male pigeon saw what had happened and he began to lament loudly about the misfortune that had befallen him. He said, "My dear wife, who meant everything to me, is now going to leave me, and with her will go my children. I lived only for the sake of these. What is the use of me being alive without them, and so unable to bear the sight of his dear ones?" Trying in vain to get out of their net, the father bird also rushed into the net and was trapped. The hunter came along and taking all of them went home happily. Like this pigeon, who is ever spending his thoughts only on his possessions, on his home, and who is bent on acquiring wealth and other worldly things to please his dear ones, will, like the pigeon, be destroyed with all those who depend on him. This birth as a human being is the gateway to the path which leads to salvation. If man does not realize this and gets involved with these worldly desires, he will be like the one who had begun to climb up, falls down, and the fall is greater since the height to which he has been raised was great. Stop. This Avadhuta Gita is long. This is the Avadhuta Gita. We will finish because there are some pranams, I think, now. So, we'll come back in the afternoon, finish the Avadhuta Gita, and the final hour of Krishna. What happens after that? The end of Parikshit. So that is the whole beginning of the Bhagavat. end of Parikshit, Uddhava's grief, and the definition of bhakti, Hamsa Avatara, vibhutis of the Lord, we have today and tomorrow. The different paths to truth, the beginning of creation, and that's it. And the Falashruti. Falashruti is what are the fruits of listening and teaching the Bhagavat. That we will do by tomorrow before we end. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Mm.